What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Two Guys Watching Football Film Room All 22 live stream. I am joined by my guy, Michael Crawford at Abukari MC. How's it going, my guy?
Cannot complain, Cole. Cannot complain. Everything is good. Excited to be doing another one of these. Always fun talking about football, talking about prospects with you. So I'm ready to get it going.
And we got a good one. We got this might be one of your Red Star guys. Is Trevor Penning one of your Red Star guys?
I like him a lot. I like him a lot. I'd be lying if I said he was, just because I'm still pretty early on in the process. I know people don't know this who are watching, but I talked to you about a bunch of guys that I've watched, and I need to probably go through at some point and do that. I like that James does that, James Ogden, like right off the top. He just is like, hey, here's a guy. He's a Red Star guy for me. But Penning is probably close to one for me. I'd say Andrew Booth was probably the one guy that I know I was pretty out there with you about. Like, hey, yeah, he's definitely a guy. But I like Penning a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot to like, and a lot of fun things to talk about. Very technically sound player. Get a little bit of bio in here on Penning. So he's a redshirt senior from the University of Northern Iowa. I think that would make him probably high school class of 2017, if I have that correct. So he's probably 22, turning 23 in this calendar year. So I mean, not old by any means, but an older prospect with some of these cats coming out, redshirt sophomores at 21 years old and whatnot. But he's listed at 6'7", 320 pounds. Redshirt his freshman year in 2017, played very little in 18. 2019, he started 15 games at left tackle. Not 15. Yeah, maybe 15 games. There's one start at right guard too. One thing I've said on Twitter that is a bold-faced lie a few times is I thought he played right tackle in that 2019 year and Spencer Brown played left tackle. So that's something that I've said wrong a few times. Now, he did have a game in the shortened FCS spring season where he did play. That was a 6-game season. He played one of those games at right tackle and the other 5 back at left tackle. And then the normal season resumed in the fall where he played all of his games at left tackle. So, I mean, primarily left tackle, game at right guard, game at right tackle in there. But I was more interested in that because I'm looking for that, guy that projects to, be a right tackle if Stanley's back, if he ends up on the Ravens, but also that ability to play left tackle. So just something to consider. He was also the only offensive lineman nominated for the Walter Payton Award, which is the most outstanding offensive player in the FCS. And I mean, I won't list them all, but he's basically named to every All-American team he was eligible for. And then just another highlight note. This was something you came across, Mike, and passed on to me. He was tied for the most penalties in 2021 in the FCS with Galen Gupton from Tennessee State with 16 penalties across 12 games. That would have also tied for first in FBS with Tyler Smith from Tulsa. He also had 6 in 6 games in 2020 and 12 penalties in 13 games in 2019. So, a lot of penalties to his name, something to kind of keep an eye on, something I never really think to look into. So it was a nice pull by you. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike, because I know you got a little bit more on kind of his backstory. So I'll pass it over to you.
I can't take credit for that. Just real quick, that was drilled into my head by Dan Hatton at the Scouting Academy. So a little free plug there for the Scouting Academy. I did 2 semesters there. I really enjoyed it. I think Dan and the whole crew there do an outstanding job, and you'll learn a ton. I mean, even if you're not like looking to do this professionally, which I wasn't. I already have a job that I've been in for a long time. That's probably where I'm going to stay, but just kind of wanted to learn more, and kind of sharpen and hone some skills and get better at this evaluation thing, just, as a hobby, as a passion, really. So shout out there to Dan and the Scouting Academy. But for Trevor Penning, I won't go as long as I did on Jordan Davis last time. I know I was given like his whole life story. It's so interesting, though. You know how much I love learning about people and their stories. So you mentioned Penning and some of his accolades. As a guy who, multi-sport guy in high school, played football, played basketball. Some people may have seen, there's a little Twitter video of him doing like a windmill dunk out there, so people may have seen that. Uh, so it's got got that basketball background. Also competed in track and field through the shot put and the discus. Some people may know that two of the best offensive tackles in the NFL to ever do it, Jonathan Ogden and Joe Thomas, also threw the shot put and had track and field backgrounds when they were in high school. I think Thomas might even have done it in college. I'm not sure, but definitely they both did it in high school, and they both talked about how that rotational movement, that rotational force that you generate from those movements, really help translate to certain kinds of blocks and certain kind of movements that you have to make on the football field. So they both credit that. So it was kind of interesting to see that about Penning. Something really cool, I don't want to lose this because this might be one of the coolest things, is that he got to play last year next to his brother. I mean, it's not uncommon. I don't think it's super uncommon to see brothers on football teams at times. I think you and I said they had 3 other sets of brothers over the years who've played there, but like literally playing right next to your brother. You're the left tackle, he's the left guard. I don't know how often that's happened. So they both have talked about how kind of cool that is. His younger brother, Jared Penning, mentioned his name there. So that's pretty awesome. You saw the video just recently yesterday of Trevor breaking the UNI squat record, 625. And it's
And then I
interesting.
sent it to you as if I had just originally found it.
I like to overload you with information, so it's easy stuff to get lost and all of that. But what's interesting about that is prior to him setting that record, I think what I had read is that he kind of outdid his brother on the bench, but his brother outdid him on the squat.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he actually, breaks the record. So, a little brotherly competition. They talked about that during that shortened season you talked about last year where they were at home. They couldn't come on campus. And so they basically went out and bought a bunch of equipment and made a gym in their garage. And they were basically out there lifting and spotting each other. They were doing footwork drills and stuff like that. So it's nice, I mean, a lot of people were in that situation where they had to kind of try to find ways to work out at home. But we got a brother who plays, on the O line with you. You guys can kind of do a lot of the same things and train in a lot of the same ways. So that was pretty cool. And I guess the last thing I'll mention, his offensive line coach at UNI is a guy named Ryan Clanton. He played at Oregon back in the day at the time that DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead were there. So he got to go up against those guys in practice. So, he's seen what like top level defensive linemen look like. And I wanted to read this because I didn't want to mess this up. I wanted to give him credit for this quote because I was like, this is pretty high praise. I mean, it's his position coach, so you expect him to speak highly of the guy, but a couple things that he said about Trevor Penning, and this one really caught my eyes. He said, I would say the biggest thing in his development is the work that he put in after practices and after everyone else left, as well as in the weight room. And we kind of just talked about that. He's going to be one of the strongest guys at the combine, no doubt. He's an absolute monster in the weight room and all 3 lifts, and that's from the work he put in. And then the other part that really caught my eye was I've been around a lot of top 10 draft picks playing and coaching, and he's by far the most physically and mentally geared for the NFL. He's one of the nastiest linemen I've ever seen in my life. I'd put him up with any NFL offensive lineman on the nasty scale. Trevor doesn't force that. It's just who he is. It's how he plays the game, but he's the nicest guy ever off the field, and the whole team loves him. So pretty high praise there. And I there was another line in that same article where he even dropped a Quentin Nelson reference. I was like, let's not get too crazy now. But he kind of mentioned just in terms of that nastiness level that he thinks, Trevor is on that scale. So I think, we may see some signs of that in this film we're going to look at.
I think right from the very first snap of this Iowa State game, baby. And that's another thing that I'll mention about him that, I mean, this stuff's always important to me. I think who you train with in the offseason is relevant, especially surrounding yourself with the best. And I think Trevor did a good job of that. He's doing, you can see it on Duke Mayweather's Instagram. I'm always checking to see the work they're putting in. He does so much, so many cool things that I just love to observe. That O-line Masterminds program could probably start putting out their own clinic tape, and I'd be buying it up by the pound. But he's working with O-line Masterminds and Duke Mayweather as his personal offensive line coach. Other cats there like Thayer Munford from Ohio State and Charles Cross, who's a fellow top offensive tackle prospect in this. So I mean, he's out there. They're working every day. He's working with the best. And it's funny, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about some of Trevor Penning's athleticism. And so I just went and looked because I was curious. I think some programs seem to do a really good job getting their guys prepared for the combine. And I know we talked about this with Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool coming from that Notre Dame program. So I was kind of like, I wonder what Spencer Brown ran at his pro day. And I know there was some of that home field advantage on these pro day scores, but he ran a 4.94 40 at, I measured in at what, big dude.
6'8", wasn't he?
Yeah, 6'7", 6'8", 311. So big dude. But he clocked in a 4.94 on the 40, hit 16.56 miles per hour. So I mean, I kind of want to start there because it's something you and I have talked about offline. It's relative. It's more of a player evaluation question in terms of how you consider athletic ability, because I can see guys that on tape did not move as well as they test. And so, I just want you to kind of give me your kind of take on how do you square that away from a player evaluation perspective. So let's just use the example of a player that doesn't necessarily wow you on film athletically, but then shows up to the combine and does wow you athletically with his testing. How do you kind of square that away, and what are some of the things you do in your process for player evaluation?
I think what you see on tape, at least for me, this is just my perspective. I know there's some different ones out there. For me, what you see on tape is always going to trump athletic testing numbers. That's just right off the top for me. I think I mentioned Scouting Academy a little earlier. Before I went there, I was pretty staunchly like anti-athletic testing numbers. Not that I want to use them at all, but I was just like, this is guys running around in shorts. This is track. This is not football. And so I was a lot more on that side of the fence. And then after going through the Scouting Academy and just getting a better understanding of why they're important and how they can be used as a tool, because it's a way to benchmark and try to make more fair comparisons of athleticism when you take out all of the other factors, right? So when you're looking at them on tape, which, like I said, I think that trumps everything. But if you're trying to compare guys, you got guys playing in different systems, being asked to do different things, variety of other factors, and then you're trying to compare athleticism that way. Whereas when you look at the testing, right, we're doing the same test. You mentioned last year that the numbers might have been cooked a little bit because people were doing stuff at pro days or whatever. But normally, when you're at the combine and everybody's in Indianapolis, everything's kind of baselined and regimented, and so you really have an apples to apples playing field in terms of the environment and the test, whether it's the 40 or the broad or the vertical, whatever, to make a comparison on athleticism that way. So as that kind of tool, I started to understand it better and have a more clear understanding of why it can be valuable. But again, I think you always start with the tape, and it can be sort of it can go either way. I guess I was going to say it could be one thing, but it could go either way. It could confirm or it could make you question some things, because you can watch a guy on tape and come up with an idea of what kind of athletic ability you think they have, and then they test later and you look at the numbers and let's say they're a lot better, like you mentioned in the hypothetical. Yeah. Then it makes you go back to the tape. Yeah. Because you're going into it not expecting to see that, and then they kind of wow you with their testing, and you're like, whoa, I didn't see that. So you go back and you try to see if there's something you missed, or if it shows up in some kind of way that maybe you didn't catch the first time. And if it doesn't, if you really, go through things carefully again, and you're like, nope, still not seeing it. Sometimes it just doesn't translate in the same way. I mean, sometimes it really is about guys working out and running in kind of almost a track environment, and they've trained for those specific tests, and they've done it in a very closed way, right? It's not like football. Football is an open, chaotic, right? You're on the field. All kinds of different things can happen and you're reacting, right? So your athleticism shows up in a lot more of a reactionary sort of way. Whereas in these tests, you're able to train for that for months, and all the little tips and tricks to get you a better start, or have you jump further or jump higher. You hone in on all those things as you work with all of these different professional trainers. And so I think that there is something to the workout warrior, the combine warrior. I think there definitely is something to that. So it's just a matter of using it as a tool, and always kind of using the tape as your kind of guiding principle, in my opinion. And one thing kind of just supports the other when they align. And if it doesn't, then you have some questions, and I think you note that and you say, hey, I'm not seeing this translate on tape in these. And maybe you can support that with some specific examples. I don't see it showing up here. I don't see it showing up there. And you just have that as part of your report or part of your notes.
Yeah, and I think that's an absolutely great great overview. And one thing I always thought about, and I got to credit Scouting Academy, is you know they focus on traits based scouting, and one of the things that they look at is play speed. And so that's something where it's basically play speed is your ability to connect athletic ability and mental processing. And so one thing athletic testing you can do, and something that I've learned, I'm more of the film background. I've always been a little tisk at the athletic testing. But one thing you cannot deny is it can show what someone's potential can be. So some of these guys that may play slower on film, is that because of athletic ability or is it because of play speed? And I think that if you put the two together, well, now you're kind of looking at what that potential can be for a guy. And then I think it's also about trying to put together, not put together, but interpret the athletic testing and all the different angles to it. So you don't want to just take a guy's 40 time and be like, look, he's athletic. He ran in a straight line really fast. That's why they do a variety of testing. There's jumps that look at explosiveness. There's the 3-cone that looks at agility. And that's why when I look at a guy like Penning, I think Penning's probably going to run a good 40. I do not expect him to run a slow 40. I don't think he's lacking athleticism in that regard. What I see and what I think we're going to see on some of this film here tonight is I think he lacks agility. And so some of that's going to come down to him being 6'7" and 320 pounds. And that's just natural. He's big. He's a big guy. Once he gets out in space, he's going to struggle a little bit more than smaller guys with a lower center of gravity. So that's absolutely something you have to consider. I see some issues with him turning. Some of it's hip mobility. Some of it just might be a lack of that kind of lateral mobility. So I think, it seemed to me, I haven't watched enough UNI film to, speak to their scheme. But it seems like I saw a lot of outside zone from them, getting him out in space on the edge. We're going to look at one play tonight that's a pin and pull. So those are true space opportunities for him to perform as an athlete. And I thought he struggled in some of those opportunities. So something to think about. But then again, when you think about how would he fit in this offense, and this is really where it comes down to that projection that we always talk about when we're looking at player evaluation. I don't see him in a ton of down block opportunities, but if he comes to Baltimore, he's going to be doing down blocking a lot. He's going to be doing a lot of veer blocking. So you got to think about him doing that veer. It's something I always thought was interesting about projecting tackles in this scheme and talking about how it's O-line friendly, and it's like, the right tackle has an easy job, and it's like, well, if they're running those veer rights, like, you still got to run an arc release, get into level 2, make a block on an athletic linebacker. That's not net. I don't think that's an easy block. I don't know what many tackles out there that want to go do that all day, but so it's just one of those things. So you got to kind of look at what's our scheme, what's Penning doing well, where is he struggling, how does that project into our scheme. I do think overall, and I don't want this to get lost in the shuffle, I think Penning is a good fit for this gap-based offense. He will be asked to do some zone. He'll be asked to block in space, absolutely. I think he's going to have the ability to develop that even further once he becomes a pro. Just something I noticed with looking at his athletic ability, and I wanted to flag it because that's one thing that I will be looking for, even though I am more of a film-based guy. But when we get his testing numbers, first thing I'm looking at is what was his 40, his 20-yard split, kind of a straight line speed, and then how is that 3-cone time, and is it showing a lower level agility relative to his straight line speed? Something that I think we could see a little bit with Ben Cleveland this year in his stepness, but he ran very fast in a straight line. So again, wouldn't say he's a bad athlete, but is he going to move laterally the same as he moves going forward? Different types of athleticism. So just always kind of a fun. I've been trying to kind of start all these with a little bit of a different evaluation perspective before we hop into the film. So I just kind of want to run through that because I think it's going to come up a few times tonight where we're talking about him playing in space and his athleticism and whatnot. So, and we got a comment in the chat from UNI Panther. So I know this guy knows UNI, and he said, can confirm. And he posted that when talking about Penning in space. So shout out to you, my man. Thanks for hopping into the live stream. And so without further ado, let's get into the film. So we're going to be starting with 20. This is going to be a rare film room where I only do one game. And part of that is because that was all I could get downloaded. So that's one aspect of this. But I think there's enough in here where I feel very, very good about, using this one game to talk about him as a player. Mike and I are going to probably refer to some of the other examples. We're going to look at a pass set and talk about how he did the same thing in one of the James Madison 2019 games. So we've watched other games, but we're really going to focus on this 2021 Iowa State game. I think one thing that's also going to stand out is he faced pretty high level competition in this one. He had is it Mike McDonald? Is that the right?
Will McDonald.
Will McDonald.
You think about the Doobie Brothers.
I'm botching Buddy's name right out the gate, so I'm -1.
Or the Ravens former linebacker.
I think that's what someone just messaged me about doing a film room on Michigan's scheme.
I was talking about the Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald.
This is a guy that had 11.5 sacks on the year. I think he came away at this game with a sack, but I don't think it came against Penning unless I missed it. I think it came against their right tackle in this one.
10,
so
10 in 2020. So coming in, this is a 2021 game. So coming into 2020, he's coming off of a 10.5 sack year. Iowa State, this was the first game of the season. So Iowa State preseason ranking, they were ranked in the top 10, I think, at that point. So this is a big game. And like you said, that matchup against Will McDonald, which is he number 9? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, number 9. Yeah.
That's pretty top tier matchup for Penning. So it's gonna be interesting.
And a speed rusher, which I think is important because again, when we're talking about, that's one thing that I need to square away with Penning as a prospect. Didn't really notice anything where I was concerned about his athleticism in terms of his vertical set. I noticed him vertical set a lot more than 45. That's one thing that we might see from him at the NFL level, a lot more vertical sets, just with being a bigger, longer dude. But, that's just, you got to do what you got to do to get the job done. But, he handles them quite well. We're going to look at, I've been talking to Mike about this ghost hand technique he's going to use later in this game that I'm probably going to focus on this for a bit because it's just, pro level pass set move and we're going to start with the first one out the gate. So this is 14:55 in the first. This is the first play of the game, first offensive play of the game. And, when you talk about what his coach said about the type of player he is, we see it right in the first. He's going to come out here and he's going to set the tone in this one. So there he is, left tackle, left side of your screen. And he's just going to, it's a PA. It's got a bit of a down block opportunity, but he's just going to flip his DN and put him right into the dirt.
Yeah, you see Iowa State, that 3 down.
A little bit of the dirt down. Gets down there, gives him the business.
And Penning talked about going into this game that it was a chip on the shoulder game for him because Iowa State didn't recruit him. So he definitely was coming in with, wanting to set a tone and let these guys know, what was up.
And this is one of those things where, I don't underrate the fact that this came on the, I don't want to spend all day on this one clip, but first play of the game, we're talking about building a bully here in Baltimore. We're talking about getting guys that want to play mean football. That's how you set the tone. That's how you let the guy know that it's going to be a long day for him across from you. And I'll never underrate that.
See a little bit of that shot put action in there.
Yeah. Get the natural leverage right up on him. That's a bit of a nothing one there. Skip ahead to 40. This is one. See a nice quick set inside. So here they're showing. What's that?
Say him and his brother communicating there.
Yeah, love to see it. And then so they're showing 6-man pressure here pre-snap. They keep the running back in. This is one of those things we kind of talked about this with one of Tyson Williams' pass sets, usually you see running back protection go inside out, but you see center make a line call here. So this is where I think, based on, you're going to see Penning quick set into his right here, and you're going to see the running back go straight for the edge. So I think they called the protection here that told the running back to take that man to his left. But you see a nice little quick set inside on the interior player, just puts him in the vice grips there.
Looks like they were full sliding to the right, and that's what had the back taking, anything that comes off the left tackle.
This right tackle had a rough day in this game, and this is a good example. I think he missed the snap count on this one. So you see everybody fire off the ball, and 77 still in a stance right there. Looks like his controller disconnected. But to look at Penning, what I liked here the most, and what I really wanted to highlight is, again, 6'7" dude, quick setting inside. Look at the natural leverage he creates. He's low, he's got those feet dug in. He's pushed up. That's creating that natural leverage. And then, that guy never got past the line of scrimmage. He does kind of lose a bit here at the end. He kind of gets a little bit too far over to his right and loses his guy, but rep's over by then if you're able to hit that kind of quick set.
And being able to step inside quickly like that, I think that's something that a point we're probably going to talk about later, because I know we talked about it offline, is you see some snaps where, maybe that doesn't show as well. And you're like, I'm wondering about his ability to kind of, get in there and cut that off quickly when guys do go inside on him. And I think seeing this play, because I was thinking about those other ones, but seeing this play, I hadn't really kind of combined the two in my mind. But seeing this play where it looks like they're calling a full slide to the right, where he knows he has to step down inside right now. It's not reactionary. I got to go because I got to cut that guy off. It's almost, I think we talked about this with Jordan Davis to some extent too, or something about one of the Georgia players. Like when you know that you have to do something, like it's not reactionary, you have time, and they're able to do it. And then when it was in a reactionary kind of situation, they didn't do it as consistently.
Yeah, it's the idea of attacking versus, kind of reading and reacting. It's that just ability to go. We said that about Jordan Davis quite a bit. When Jordan Davis was asked to just go, he was a lot higher level competitor than versus more of those two gap opportunities or reading and reacting. So, and I also think this kind of shows a little bit of that, potential. Very agile play there. Easy step inside, shows good fluidity through his lower body to stay low. He jacks the guy's pads up, creates natural leverage. That's one of those things. So it's like, well, there's an agile player right there, right? So is it the inability to do it consistently? And I think we're going to see some of it right here. There's going to be a pin and pull opportunity to the left where he's a lead blocker. I think his brother pulls with him on this one. Yeah, they're both going. So he's squaring up. He's going to take first man and then kick. He's supposed to be bouncing him outside, right, and creating that crease up here. And 75 is going inside. So that should be the hole right there between Penning and his brother, Penning. And, he struggles to kind of create that line. That's where the terminology I always use, and this is just from when I was a coach, when you get out in space, especially on pull opportunities, you got to get yourself back in the chute, right? Because first of all, you got to have the athletic ability to get yourself to the position that you need, the place on the field that you need to go. But then it's on you to get back in your chute. That means re-engage your technique, get back, coil the hips, get low at the point of contact. And so this is where, he gets out there and, Buddy just kind of runs around him. And I think he struggled with the angle there. And then he struggled to recover because of, what it looked to me like an agility issue.
And that's where you can see some of the questions that I had about bend. I think it shows up in his pass sets. Sometimes you can see him bend and you don't really have, like a concern about it. But when you look at that play and you see him pulling out, and as he's closing in on contact with the guy, he's bending more at his waist.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not really sinking his hips or bending or bending at the hips and the knees. And, it just makes you think that, okay, is this about consistency of technique? Because I seen him do it in pass sets. So, and then, this is a different assignment, right? He's out in space. Like you said, he's being asked to do something different. So is it, hey, I don't have that flexibility in my hips and knees to be able to bend that way? Or it's in certain assignments, that I'm more comfortable with, I can do it with consistency. And then in other things, maybe I'm a little bit more inconsistent with it because it's just something that he needs to rep more. So that's one of those things that, again, going back to the testing numbers, if I see, good three cone, good short shuttle, stuff like that, good broad jump, because there's some explosion in terms of having to bend and engage and unlock your hips there too, then I'm probably going to come back to this and say, okay, well, and some of the other plays that we're going to look at and see if I can't, kind of hone in on that a little bit more and say, okay, wait a minute, he tested really well in those areas. I should be able to see some of these things showing up on tape that match. And then, like I said, it's a matter of, is it can't do, or is it depends, right? It was situational.
And I think that's one of those things too, where how many times do you think they ran pin and pull this year in Baltimore? Like,
I could actually tell you, but I'd have to look it up. On the top of my head, I don't know.
But not a lot, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, how much of that is kind of like what I talked about Tyler Linderbaum. It's like, you got to kind of project in that scheme and understand how if I see a player doing something consistently and it seems like a weakness, but I know he's going to come here and not have to, not be asked to do that a ton. How much does it impact your evaluation when you're projecting them to that team? Just something to think about, because I do think we're going to kind of bring this up quite a few times. I think we're going to see split zone here. Might be wham. I struggle with those two concepts. Yeah, same idea here. I mean, this one's a little bit different because he's on the running back goes, it's on the backside and it gets cut back. So he gets a little bit out ahead, and the guy that it looked like his man ends up making a play on the ball.
Yes, I think, again, you're looking at being in a little bit more space, having that reactionary sort of athleticism, and a guy maybe going a little farther outside, that linebacker maybe jumping out a little further than Penning expected, and then trying to react back to that. I mean, there's also the other factor of that slice block coming across.
Missing.
Not doing a great job there. That kind of doesn't help him a tremendous amount either. But I think you still see that as something to note, where you say, okay, that reactionary athleticism, and then you got a guy rolling up on the back of your legs too. All right, so never mind. I'm not going to be as hard on him on that one.
Well, I think the key here is that cross block has to hit, and then the running back aim points on the right side of the line. So Penning taking kind of inside leverage against that backside player makes sense in terms of the design of the run here, because it is a run to the right side of the line. It's zoned, so with a cross block, so it's expected that a cutback can be hit, but McDonald completely disrupts that play, and it's McDonald, number 9. So I mean, it's one of those things where I kind of saw it at first, and I was like, well, he's out in space again, but I do think if Penning was looking at this play, he's probably like, if coach asks him, he's like, it's taking inside leverage. So that because that run should be going between 67 and 72, depending on how they set it up. That's how it's normally set up, right? With that right, you're usually aiming at the outside butt cheek of the right of the guard. So, something to keep in mind there. I think that cross block made it look worse, but if you're kind of zeroing in, it just showed, struggling to kind of react to a level 2 player and agilely move towards him. So something to think about there.
Yeah, if McDonald doesn't make that play, then it probably doesn't look as bad, because of where Penning is at. He's in a position to keep that linebacker walled off, and there's actually a pretty decent lane there for the running back. But McDonald, being the guy that he is, he makes a play.
So I think he doesn't. So we're going to see a nice vertical set from him here. And I don't think he actually engages with it, but it kind of showed a good example of him getting into that vertical set, which I think helps. So he's going to line up. He's got the 4-eye over him. Well, it's kind of a 4. He shifts more inside. He's got an outside linebacker here to his left. So, based on the pre-snap look, he's probably expecting that he's going to have to kick or, set vertically on the outside linebacker. Now, I thought here he played a little bit on his heels, and I think I messaged you about this right when I saw it. But the foot quickness and the stride length looked pretty good. He just, like I said, it looked like he was a little on his heels when he was setting. But in terms of clean footwork, he's ready. Again, not much of a one-on-one block, given that Buddy kind of came right into him. But I like the foot quickness on it. Maintains that line.
And I think you'll see that in probably some of the other clips that you have too. When he's taking a true pass set, it looks clean, it looks smooth.
Yeah.
Like you said, we probably can't take a ton away from this one, but I think it'll show up in some of the other ones.
Yeah, and it can be tough in college football in general to get significant, deep vertical sets just with how college football is played nowadays. A lot of quick passing, so I take every opportunity to show that kind of footwork that I can get. But I really like this. He reminds me of. And I mean, I don't want to compare every single bigger, longer guy to Orlando Brown Jr., but Brown Jr. is so technical in the pass game. And what I found with Penning, very patient as a pass blocker. He lets guys get into him before he hits that punch. He just stays patient. He trusts his athleticism as a pass blocker, and I think that's really important. And I think you can kind of see it here. He's just stepping. He's waiting. He's got his hands ready. His hands are ready to shoot when they need to. We're going to see it a few times throughout tonight, but I really like that. I see that in his game in terms of the patience. Not that I think he's going to be an Orlando Brown Jr., but I like to see patience because it's just something that he did so well. I think we do see a nice true set here. Same idea, just patient with his hands, uses his footwork, doesn't need to hit it too early. He's just walling here.
Yeah, patient. And you can tell he wasn't worried about that guy's speed or anything like that. Because you could see that very first two steps. It's almost like a short set, really. Like he's just kind of waiting on the guy, like, hey, right. And then the guy's got to throw a move, and he's able to pretty much, shoot his hands and control it. So I think what I liked about that, and you'll see it throughout. I can't see that guy's number clearly here, but I remember I always jot down the numbers of the rushers they go against when I'm watching and taking notes. Because, once you learn about those guys, I go back and I look those guys up. And then you see how a guy like Penning will set different guys differently, right? So he's obviously done his mental work and his preparation on these guys to know, okay, this guy, here's what he likes to do, so I can probably do this, versus a Will McDonald, like you said, who's more of a speed guy, is probably going to throw a few more moves. All right, I might have to set him a little bit differently. So I like just those little glimpses you can kind of get of maybe how a guy is mentally preparing for, who he's going to go against.
I got to check in on the comments here. We got Dan in there, off-season yoga with Ben Cleveland. And then we got someone else. Let's get the whole O-line on a yoga wellness retreat with Marlon after the draft. So I'm with you guys on that one. I've talked about this before. I think I talked about it with Ben Powers. I was hoping he'd, get into a yoga class downtown Baltimore or something like that in the off-season. Ryan Bratton, what's up, brother? And we got Engraven in the chat, baby. Engraven, what's going on? O-line guru. There he is. Thank you for popping in, my guy. This is one of those things again. This happened a lot in this game with just the way Iowa State's scheme is. I mean, they kind of use these bigger base ends, and then they bring down those outside linebackers, which is where you'll see McDonald on some of these snaps. But good variation in the set here. Shows his ability to adjust his pass rush plan or his pass blocking plan to his pass rusher. Good things to see in a player in terms of their ability to recognize and make adjustments. So he's on the right side of the line here. Like that a lot. That's a nice seal block. He's got looks like a similar concept to what we saw before. But the difference is he's got a base end versus it being a level 2 guy that's his man. I think that's so would you call this wham or split zone? This is where I struggle. I struggle with this every single time.
That's probably more in that split zone family. Because for me, you could he's blocking.
He goes inside. That's what always screws me up.
Yeah. Well, here's here's where I've started to put it in, just because I chart the Ravens run game, and I'm using a lot of that old 49ers terminology because that's the playbook that I have. They had a play called zone F chop, and that's exactly what that looks like. So you have the slice blocker, the F, the fullback, coming across like you would in split zone, but instead of blocking the end, he blocks a backer. And so it's like an insert. And so a lot like that zone F chop to me. Now, if he was blocking a defensive lineman, then I'd call it wham.
Right.
I know
Right.
that's kind of like
Okay.
picky. Level 2 guy
Gotcha.
versus a defensive lineman, I would call it wham. Now, if it's an offensive lineman, like say the center doesn't block that guy that's head up on him. Let's say he pulls and kicks out that DN where Penn is, then I'd call that trap.
Trap.
Right. So like if it's not an offensive lineman who's blocking a first level guy, I call it wham. If it's an offensive lineman trapping that guy, I call it trap. So it's kind of nitpicky, but that you got to have a system when you're charting. You got to
Oh
have
yeah.
something, or you all over the place. So that's how
That's used to
I
happen to me
look
when
at
I
it.
played left guard.
I
I used to forget the play. I just didn't know what we were doing on this play.
I want to make this clear. By no means am I saying that is the only way,
Yeah.
the only terminology or the only way to describe it. Like I said, I had to come up with something in my own little language to make it understandable for me. But yeah, that looks like that zone F chop play to me. But we're here
And so
talking about that.
But what I like here from Penning is I like the finish at the end of the play. But what I like is, it's just a smart play. He doesn't need to, the run is to the right side of the line. It's kind of what we talked about before. He just needs to wall his guy off. And so, I just like he's showing those blocks where he's going to finish. I want to see that from our guys consistently. So I thought that was important to highlight.
The guy at the end, right? You see him when he gets up, the defensive lineman, he's like, "Get off me," because he supermans him a little bit. Yeah,
that guy you were talking about, 98 here, we're going to see later in this game. He ends up knocking Buddy's helmet off towards the end of the game. So that was someone he saw.
Of course, on that block too. That previous one, that same movement where you kind of got to get under that guy and then rotate and unlock your hips, and he kind of just turns him out. So you can definitely see where that movement can help.
And projects well to down blocks, right? Like even though that wasn't technically a down block, but his ability to get in under a guy in a one-on-one close quarters situation, create leverage, and move him to where he wants him to go, that's what you're going to see in down blocks, right? So I think that's also important. As we don't see in this game from you and I use a ton of down blocks, we got to kind of find what we can to project what that could look like. So I think that's a good example of that sort of concept. And so there he is against McDonald, and you just see that sheer strength. He's awesome at the end. That's not what McDonald wants to be doing in this one. I know it's it's a run play, but
I think he's going to be happy when he gets to the NFL. He gets somewhere where he can stand up in a 2-point stance and get on the edge of the tackle instead of this. Like, nah,
that ain't his game.
Out there, I need to be out there where I can hunt.
But it is a good example, where if he can quick set on you, get his hands on you. I know McDonald's a lighter speed rusher type guy, but it just shows, look how much power's in his hands. And then showing that rotational force.
Give him a little something at the end.
That's what we want, right? I want to see that every play. He's gonna put someone into the ground again. He needs a little help. Not a highlight block.
There comes over a little help from little bro.
Well, what's that? 3? We're at 4 plays. I think we're in the second quarter where he's finishing guys into the ground. So just again, something you want to see consistently from your guys. I think we're gonna get another space block on this next one. Get back here. I did a terrible job of writing down time clips. So right side of your screen again. I think this is an outside zone. Yeah, so he's going to get out there. See, and patience by So this is what when I'm talking about his ability in space. This is the type of thing that we're looking at. So that's it's got to be a DB, maybe a safety stepping up in the box there.
20, with a 20 number. That's a DB, and so that's tough. That's tough for any offensive lineman. And from a DB's perspective, in a lot of places, that's I I guess in the NFL it might be different. They might have like a little fine system in the DB room or something, but you know, at lower levels it might be push-ups or whatever. But like within your group, that's like a spoken thing. Like, hey, we're not gonna let an offensive lineman block us in space.
No,
Right? We're
no.
athletes. That can't happen. So
You know what the funny thing about this play is? The more I watched it, he comes out of his set here with or out of his stance, sorry, with a shuffle step. So you're gonna see right here, shuffle, shuffle, right?
yeah,
So he's not necessarily moving forward, but what he's doing with those shuffle steps is he's keeping himself square
yep.
and in line with the line of scrimmage. But then he runs. And so the more I walk right there, he gets upwards, and this is where again he struggles to get back into his shoot. Whereas if he had stayed low and shuffled, I don't think he needed to quit shuffling. It's a good example of where you can see guys use different techniques to try and go against speed, right? So
Yep.
it's once he stood up, he stands up, he's out of his shoot, he can't re-engage, and he just runs around him. But I think if he's shuffling, he's lower to the ground. He's just moving, sideways, sideways, sideways. He's not going to. It's not going to take a lot for Penning to overpower this guy. So that was something where I was like, oh, he was kind of onto something there. I think if he just keeps shuffling here, if he just goes shuffle, shuffle, just keep shuffling. You're square with him right now. Don't run at him. Don't play his game. Just shuffle. But maybe he's expecting that runner to get up to him. But again, I think we see this a few times. It's just that kind of that, getting out in space. He's not moving quite as well as you'd like to see.
And I think the early part of that is really the interesting point that you hit on, is that you see that ability to shuffle and stay square, and that's a big thing for me. I talk about that all the time with the shuffling and the galloping, and I get all nerdy with it. But I think the more you can stay square, the longer you can stay square, the more it allows you to react to different kinds of movements when you have to. So the fact that he showed he could do it coming off the line, and like you said, then maybe it's just a matter of kind of changing your approach on that second level, and some of that patience that you show in your pass set when you get out on a play like that, and kind of allowing that DB to show his hand right before you have to show yours, so he can just jump around you, and then you allow the runner to make you right. So come out like he did there, and the DB can jump around you. Now the runner is forced to come back inside. He can't go outside because the DB's out there now. But if you're a little bit more patient with that and allow the DB to kind of show his hand first, now the runner can adjust off of that and say, okay, he went inside. That's going to give Penning the ability to wall him off outside. Now I can bounce it back outside, right? Not to say that it would necessarily happen that way, but I think, again, it's one of those things where you see breadcrumbs in his game. You see crumbs, you're like, okay, he can do this. And then it gets in a different context. Oh, how come he didn't do it there? So
and
that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing.
I don't want to invoke the name of Zeus Jr. again, but that's something we saw a lot from him, where he just kind of trusts his ability to move laterally, and he wouldn't let guys, he'd play his game and make guys adjust to him. So, just one of those things. I haven't really thought it, I'm not good at player comparisons, but I think it's something that's going to kind of repeatedly come up. And it's just something that, from studying Brown Jr. on the Ravens, I'm just used to seeing this bigger guy that could also play a finesse game. And that's where, I want to see some of these bigger, maybe not as athletic, at least in space, offensive tackles kind of take some learnings. And, I always refer to it. Go listen to Orlando Brown Jr. on Brandon Thorne's podcast, Trench Warfare. He talks about the guys that he watched on film, where he kind of mimics some of the stuff that they would do that helped him kind of cover up some of those athletic things and become a more complete technician. Something that I don't think some of these bigger, less athletic guys get enough credit for. It's their ability to kind of develop that technique and become more technical players. So, not to drone on that, but just something to think about with his game. Yeah. So again, here, it's kind of the same as that vertical set we saw before, where the outside linebacker doesn't come again, but again, he's just stepping, checks inside, gives the help, looks really comfortable in his stance in his set. And I think that's one of the big things I took away from some of his vertical sets and pass protection. He just looks comfortable. It's not a problem for him. He doesn't really seem There's no point where he ever seems nervous about speed, never seems nervous about guy coming inside on him. He's just kind of always ready. He looks really aware, good processing all the way throughout his reps. And then I think we get another finish here at 8:55.
Yep. Baby bro teeing it up again.
Yep. Again, not a whole lot to take away here. I just like to see it. I don't know when the whistle blew, but he played through it. I'll tell you that.
It's the consistency of it. Just the fact that it's happening, like after every play.
He's got to be miserable to play against. Jump right ahead here.
You want somebody's gonna get frustrated, lose their cool. Maybe you draw a 15-yarder on them or something because they're just like they can't take it anymore.
And my guy Ronald mentioned it in the chat. Do that play where he annihilates the guy from North Dakota State and takes his lunch money afterwards. I think that was going around Twitter. That North Dakota State guy that he finished in the they were like backed up on their goal line, and he just finishes them into next week. And it's just one of those intimidation things, right? Like throughout that pass rush battle. Do you want to go against the guy that's finishing you every game, giving you those shots? Reminds you of Ryan Jensen. Just from watching Jensen play, he used to make guys mad every game. And he always used to do the turn to the ref and be like, I didn't do it. That was my favorite part of this game.
That's been a key for me this evaluation season, violence, right? You're always looking for guys to be physical. Obviously, it's football. It's got to be a physical game. But I think there's another level of physicality, and that's violence. And that's what that North Dakota State play, that was violent, right? You could have just shoved that guy down. That would have been enough. But no, he torqued him and slammed him, body slammed him.
Just like he did in the first wrap of this game. That was a bigger dude in that first play in this game that we're watching right now. So it may not have looked the same, but same intention is there. And that's the thing with Penning's game. He has mean intentions for what he's going to do to these players.
They're bad intentions.
He's got bad intentions. And so we're going to have two back-to-back plays here. Two plays that I think I talked about with you in our chat for about an hour, because what we're going to see here on back-to-back plays, both are against McDonald. So again, not just some random pass rusher, high-level player, productive player, speed rusher, going against him, type of rushes he's going to see at the NFL level. And he has two pretty good back-to-back reps here, both in pass protection too. So again, patience with the hands. I know he kind of loses them there at the back of the pocket, but you can see it as he's going through his set here. He's just patient. He's gonna let McDonald try. He's trying to bend him, tries to get him with the double hand swipe. Just patient.
And having help from his brother there, that helps too, because there's no inside move there from McDonald. You can see he kind of wants to work something to set him up and come back in, but he can't come inside because there's help there. So he's forced to stay outside. And then Penning can just sit on that. He's like, look, I know I got help inside, so I can just sit on this outside move.
And that's one of the things that's frustrating about watching some of these Big 12 defenses where is Iowa State Big 12 actually? I don't even know if they're Big 12. Doesn't matter. It's just some of these base defense 3-man lines where it's like a 3.
That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like I don't even know.
For some reason, I think it's Big 12, but then Iowa's Big 10. So I don't know. Someone drop that in the chat. But basically, what I'm getting at is when you're trying to watch offensive tackles, you see a lot of 3-man lines. You're going to just naturally see double teams, right? So it kind of hurts your ability to see those one-on-ones. But what I see here, good patience, trust his footwork. Right out there, And then what we're going to see on this next play, same thing. Going to hit him with the ghost hand, collapse on the shoulder, finish him. So when I say ghost hand, if you guys look at my screen right now, ghost hand is very simple. It's a quick flash of your hand. And what he's trying to do with that is he's trying to get you to, as the defender, to shoot your hands. So it's basically a little bit of cat and mouse in this. You see this from very technical, refined offensive tackles. It's just, it's the game within the game. We talk about this all the time as a, pass rusher versus offensive tackle, game within the game. They've been repping against each other, going through a lot of sets. It's just, it's a tool in your toolbox as a pass protector. And again, he's got the help. See right there. I think I kind of missed it on the skip. So you're going to see him go like this. It's more of a hand swipe like that. And he's going to get McDonald to shoot his hands. I'm going to try and pause it on the right. So right there. You see his hand coming up? He shoots that. As soon as he does it, McDonald's up like this, right? Because he's starting to try and swipe that hand. If you're going to move that hand inside and I'm McDonald, I'm going to swipe that hand, bend your edge, get up under you, get behind you, and get right to the quarterback. And then Penning just collapses on his shoulder and finishes him. So that's
it's a really good move because again, it's like bait, right? It's like fishing and you're throwing bait in the water and you're waiting for the fish to bite. So you flash that hand, it's going to get McDonald to show his move, to throw his move, and then as soon as he throws it, now you can chop those hands down or you can attack his move, whatever his move is, and you basically control the rep at that point. So I love when guys use it, and there's a variety of different things that guys can do, but to me, it's always encouraging when guys are willing to vary their sets, vary their hand usage, because to me, it just shows confidence. They're confident in their ability. They're confident in what they think they can do. Because sometimes you see guys who just don't do it. They don't change up. They don't vary. And, a guy's going to get a beat on that if he rushes you enough times in a game, and he's going to be able to set something up and work something. I think when you can mix in stuff like that, you keep rushers off balance, because now they got to be looking for that next time. Next time you start to flash that hand, are you really punching or is it the ghost? So that kind of factors into their rush.
And this isn't a one-time thing. I mean, like I said, we saw this in the James Madison 2019 game. It's something that he does regularly. And that's what I mean. As a pass blocker, he seems to have a good plan in this within the game. And so I think it's something that's really important to see in some of these guys coming out of college. It shows advancement as a pass protector. And I think this is the play where we get the bucket off. Yeah, he's just give him a couple shots at the end of the game. Bucket, yeah, he's mad. He wants to fight. You're not getting one. Again, mean dude. Not nice. Again, not much of a set. I don't know. I got to keep showing these. That guy's been going up against Penning all day. He's sick of it.
You're looking for those tone setters, right? On both sides of the line, offensive line and defensive line. You want guys who are tone setters. And I think, he shows that in his game that, look, yeah, I'm going to block you, but there's also going to be a little bit of extra too. It's going to be within the rules. We're not going to be dirty or anything like that, but it's just going to let you know that I'm not the one to play with. It's just, I'm not one. And so I like that. I like that tone. I like that demeanor.
And this is against McDonald again. So, again, he doesn't have help on the inside.
See, this is what I like from McDonald. I would want to see him doing that every time. 2-point stands, get out in a wide technique. This head up stuff, come on, man. That's not what I'm about. Let me get out there in space as you stand up. Aiden Hutchinson talked about that, about how, previous defenses, he was kind of more down in 3-point stands, but this year McDonald let him stand up. He's like, you can see everything. You can see so much more of everything when you're standing up. So I like that for guys like McDonald who have that kind of ability. So this was a good look for me. It's like, okay, you might really have to face something here from McDonald.
And just to go back and clarify, Iowa State is Big 12. I didn't make that up. Iowa won't play UNI any longer, so we have to play ISU. They're just trying to eliminate FCS opponents.
Okay, Kirk Ferentz said, "Nah, you're not giving me no L's early in the season, no sir."
I gotta give a shout out to my guy UNI Panther 043 in the chat. Seriously, man, thanks for popping in. I love seeing this kind of stuff from when we get doing these live streams and getting some of the college football fans in there. So shout out to you, my guy. But again, what I think we see here is, he's going to face a lot of this kind of stuff at the NFL level, especially if he's in the NFL as a left tackle. He's going to face speed rushes where he's on an island, and it's going to be this patience. He's just patient with his hands. He's got that kind of inside move walled off. You could talk a little bit about, he might have lose his balance there at the end. Not a major issue to me. So I guess the big question is, can he play left tackle at the NFL level? Does he have that type of athleticism as a pass protector? As much as I'll talk about his athleticism in the run game, there's really nothing in his game as a pass protector in terms of athletic ability where I caught myself being like, I don't know if he could do this at the NFL level. So I think we're going to talk about a little bit of that at the end, but I think this is the kind of stuff you see, right? It's just he's just so clean. He's technical. He's patient with his hands. He hits it there. I think it's really that patience with his hands, his ability to square up a guy if he is out on an island. Those are the things that I'm really looking for as a pass protector from some of these guys.
And I think that part at the end too is something that he can clean up, because you will have to be cognizant of that at the NFL level, because there guys will spin back on that sooner than McDonald did, because you're going to be dealing with more advanced guys, right? Guys who've been rushing for a long time. Think about if he was to come to the Ravens, whether he plays right or left tackle, you're going to see TJ Watt, right? And so he's going to see that back, and he's going to be like, okay, he's got outside help.
Yeah,
I can hit this spin sooner. And so you're going to have to be in a position to be able to recover against that spin if it comes.
See, but I thought he had the inside walled off right here, right? He knows that outside helps there, so he doesn't really spin until after he gets his hands on him, right? So
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. NFL rusher is going to see that back, and he's going to know how to manipulate that and be able to set himself up to spin back inside sooner. Here, you're right. He saw the back inside. Now the back comes back outside. McDonald kind of held off on doing that. But guys in the pros, you see them do that all the time. They'll manipulate those guys, and you might not even have that help at the pro level. You may be one-on-one with that guy, and so you're going to have to be prepared for that. And that was the one thing that I wish that I got to see more of from him in this game, is more one-on-ones, because there was a number of times, and we've seen it on here, where it's either been his brother helping inside, or he's got a back helping. And so I really wanted to see more one-on-ones, but we're going to see plenty of those at the Senior Bowl. But I wanted to see them in this game too.
Yeah, I think that's one of those, again, a lot of three-man line opportunities where you're just, who are you going to help with, probably against their best pass rusher, and Will McDonald. So I think that plays into a big thing here. I think he gets a holding penalty on this one, so we can kind of look at why. This is something that I noticed in his 2019 tape. I think he struggled on inside moves quite a bit, and it's something that James Ogden and I looked at with E20, where he just kind of overset on his guy or didn't get his post step quite inside enough, and so he's going to quick set to his right, and Lyman's going to slant right. He's okay for leverage here. He's getting, he's got the leverage point. He's kind of a little high, and then he just gets run through his inside shoulder. So he gets that hold. I think
he could have let him go, and he wouldn't have. I think he could have let him go, and he wouldn't have drawn the flag. Like, he twisted him down into the ground. I think he could have let him go. Flag. Like, what?
I don't know where.
You're here. Your QB's let him go right there. But he twisted him down to the end there, and I think that's what drew the flag. He could have just let him go. The QB was.
But like we saw, he had a propensity for getting penalties, right? So maybe this was, and that's probably one of the bigger concerns that needs to be captured, is those penalties aren't necessarily what you want to see from a guy, especially the consistency. Basically averaged a penalty a game all through his 3 years playing consistently, 2019, 2021 spring season, 2021 fall season. So not what you want to see.
No, but that one looks correctable. That's why I was making a I think that's correctable. I think he, on this specific one, I think he can let go a little bit sooner here. I know he feels like the guy's getting off of him, and he obviously doesn't want him to hit his quarterback. But you've got help. Again, there's a back there. You've got help again. So I think you can let go of that a little bit sooner. So, look, that one I feel like, hey, that can be coached up to clean that part of it.
And then I think he loses inside again here. Yeah, he just overset. Get back to this. It's going to be 98 again coming out.
Yeah, he set out first and then had to react back inside.
Wondered if he missed the line here. Because do they all go right? Except for him? Yeah, they all slide right. So maybe that's just a half line protection.
Yeah, it's weird. Because if it's like that, it's almost like he was being locked on the backside guy there. Because I was like, if it was full slide like that one we saw earlier in the game, then he would kind of be coming down inside on that guy. I don't know. Maybe that was like something where they were locking him on the back. Maybe there was a run call in there and they went to something else. There's a lot of what ifs with this stuff when you don't know what they're doing. But yeah, you could see on that one. It's just, and see that second step. Now I wanted to ask you about this because I've seen this with other guys. I've seen it with him and I've seen it with other guys too. So when you watch him, his first steps out, then he's got to redirect back inside. His first inside step to redirect is flat, right? Flat lateral, I mean, back inside. He doesn't go back. He just steps back to his right there. Looks good, right? And I'm thinking, okay, give me another one of those. Give me another one just like that, just a little bit more inside so you can stay square. But then it's depth. The second one comes back. It doesn't stay as flat, right? The first one is just
So
like
we've talked about this before, right? It's that the way you coach this is diagonal steps, right? So you take that. So I'll show you with my hand. So this is my outside foot. So I take that first step back and then I mirror it. And then the way you coach it is when you step back inside that front leg, your post step, your inside leg would step diagonally. But you see a lot of guys in practice, just because it's one of those things where the way you coach it, the way it's implemented aren't always perfect, right? So you'll sometimes see that diagonal step, that inside leg, that post leg that's supposed to go diagonally will come flatter, and you'll flatten a guy out a little bit. But I think with that one, because you want to hit that cutoff step, right? So I think that's a good example of that. So that's where I would want as a coach, I'd want him to take more of a diagonal step, because then I'm creating that leverage with my inside hand on his chest plate by stepping inwards towards him. And then I can kind of re-engage rather than me flattening out. And now my base is flattened. So I can kind of be compromised on both sides. So that's what I thought happened there. That's what I wrote down, is I thought he took that I wrote post steps goes flat. So I'll show you what I mean.
One thing that I circle, because it shows up a couple of times with him. And it's like that first inside step to redirect against that inside move. I think that's exactly how you want it. And then the second one goes more behind him.
Yeah, flattens. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why are we going back?
Yeah, right there.
Why are we going back?
Yeah.
Why are we continuing to go laterally inside towards the right so we can kind of stay in front of the guy and keep him cut off? Why are we going back? Because then when he goes back, he opens up that inside hip. And then
one thing that I think complicates it with him, look at his stance versus 77s. Now, I think 77 has a lot of hip mobility issues, so I think that's why they start him out so extreme with how far back his outside leg is. But he's got a very flat stance consistently. That's not just this rep. I found his stance, like, he's low, but I found, I mean, it's hard to tell from the end zone angle. I found that he almost had a stance you'd see from a guard, where that back foot that's usually offset, the way I was doing with my hands, which may not have been that helpful, but it helps me explain it. But I found his stance flatter than I was expecting for him as an offensive tackle. So when he steps back,
look at his brother, here, like the exact same.
I think I wrote that up front of my notes. I wrote guard stance, just because you mentioned it during the Aquano watch that I was looking for things like hand placement, stance, some of those finer details that I don't pay attention to. But I think that's one way you could work on that, is maybe if he drops that foot a little bit more, once he takes that kick step back with his outside leg, he'll have more ability to drive forward diagonally rather than flattening that post step. So that's kind of how I see it. But you're absolutely right. That's what happens here. He ends up basically, he goes flat, flattens himself out, loses his leverage as that's the best thing about those diagonal steps. I mean, the way they should work in theory is as I take that diagonal step forward, I'm taking a power step and I'm cutting you off, and I'm getting that kind of inside hand. If I have my hands in the right place, I can use that as a leverage point to get up under your pads. So that's what I always like about those. But I think we've talked about this a few times, but it shows that flattening. But I really wondered about his stance to begin with. We're going to get into a little bit of a discussion to wrap up here. So if you guys have questions or comments, drop them and I'll post them up on the screen. But one thing we did have before here that I want to show, because it's kind of a good spot. So what's up, everyone? I don't want to draft a one-trick guy that is a good fit for Roman's offense. I want a well-versed left or right tackle. So I think that's one of these interesting things with Penning. So I think there's a couple things here. You got to project a prospect into the scheme that you currently run. I think that makes the most sense. But you also have to think about, when I'm looking at offensive tackles, I need a good pass protector, right? So how does Trevor Penning project as a left or right tackle in any scheme as a pass protector? I'd say pretty good. I feel good about his pass protection. I feel good about a lot of the things, there's nothing that I saw in his pass protection game where I was like, ugh, don't like that. Nothing really seemed, I think there's a couple technique issues. We talked about the stance. I think he shows really good patience with his hands. I think he has violent hands. I think he has a good ability to create leverage despite being a taller guy. There was one thing that stood out in the North Dakota game that I don't obviously have on here because I only have Iowa State. There's a few times where I found he would prepare for a guy that was bending his edge, and he'd preemptively flip his hips out to the outside, and that's where he was losing inside quite a bit. But that came a lot in 2019, and it looked like something, and we just need more games. That's something that James told me Dan would always say. If you have those questions, go find more film. It's just hard to get your hands on right now. So I would love to get some more film because so basically what he would do is as he would vertically set on a guy, he would flip his hips to square before the guy even got to the point in which he would square. And so what that meant was guys would set him up out wide and then cut inside on him as he flips his hips. So they kind of within that game, within the pass rush battle, they were kind of using his own. I call it a cheat, right? He's cheating outside to get ready for that speed rush. But what I see in his 2021 game, in this Iowa State game against a very good speed rusher, a lot more trust in his athletic ability on the outside. So that's something that got me pretty excited with his pass protection game because that shows me development. That's not just, that's 2 full seasons ago. He had the spring FCS season in 2021, and then this was the FCS season in the fall. So I think that shows development as a pass blocker. So how does he project in any offense as a pass protector? Pretty good. I think if you're asking him to get out in space, run outside zone in like a Titans, Browns, who else? Vikings, one of those teams that they're going to run outside zone 20, 25 times a game. Maybe Penning isn't the right fit for you. But those are just naturally, I wouldn't call him a one-trick pony. I guess that's where I kind of want to conclude on.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I tend to agree with you. I think he's a solid pass protector. Obviously, we got a lot of, well, we didn't in that one game, but he's had, let me say it that way. He's had a lot of reps at left tackle. Now I think for me, the one thing that I want to see, and this is something that his offensive line coach actually mentioned, he said he thinks the biggest adjustment for him is going to be the speed of the NFL versus FCS. And so that's why for me, I'm really looking forward to seeing him at the Senior Bowl because that's not the NFL, obviously, but you're going to get more NFL type prospects. We know a lot of those guys out of the Senior Bowl end up being top 100 type draft picks.
Yeah.
Some of them, much higher than that. So he's going to get some reps against some guys who have that kind of NFL ability, that kind of NFL talent. And I want to see how he adjusts to that kind of speed. Obviously, the Iowa State game, you mentioned it. It's an FBS opponent, a guy, Will McDonald, even though I don't know how in the world Will McDonald got as many sacks as he did with the way they line him up there. But I want to see when you have to really deal with guys who are going to be in a 2-point stance, who are going to get out wide on you and really can get you on an island. You don't have any help. There's no guard. There's no back. There's nobody there to help you. I want to see what you're going to be able to do in those situations because we know in high leverage critical situations in games, we know it watching the Ravens all this year, how much they help their tackles. We know they help their guys, but there are always those moments in every game where they find a way to isolate that guy, right? Where your help doesn't come because of another alignment, where the back's got to get out or whatever. And that can be the difference between a huge play in a game. So I really want to see him in those situations at the Senior Bowl, just to see what he looks like, just because I didn't get a chance to really see them because, to your point, we just don't have enough film. It doesn't mean he didn't do them at Northern Iowa. We just didn't get an opportunity to see it because we don't have access to enough film. So I don't want to say he can't. That's not what I'm saying. I want to see it at the Senior Bowl, and I know we will because I know, there'll be the one-on-ones throughout practice. Obviously, there'll be the game. So we'll get an opportunity to see that.
And we got a handful of penalties for blocking too long. And while that's something that kills drives as a fan, I enjoyed the linebacker pancakes from our source on the inside, UNI Panthers. So that was something I was expecting. When were those penalties? Some of the rough stuff that we saw, and that's where aggression versus controlled aggression comes into play. So it's something that I think you definitely have to consider with him. something to think about. Another good comment here from Tyler. Looks like he goes where the defender is versus where he is going, and that's a really good comment because that's kind of, as a run blocker on some of those zone blocks, you're blocking a space, right? You don't want to get influenced by where the player is. You're trying to, and that's why zone gets called simple all the time. And I mean, in theory, it's simple, but it gets complex quick. You got to be a read and react kind of guy. You got to anticipate where the defender is going to be. You have to work with the guy beside you. So I think I don't really agree that it's necessarily that simple, but something to think about. So I guess, Mike, we'll go back to you. Based on the info you have now, does it seem like 14 is a reach and 45 is too late? That's the question, and it gets really tough with some of these guys. I'm a little bit in terms of where to value a guy. Uh, how do I value a guy? How should I try and say this? I think we sometimes, and I think we did this with Oway to give a practical example. I think we worry too much sometimes about, is this guy worth pick number 14? I would prefer if he was pick 20. That's something that you kind of heard with Oway. I don't really know if I want to take Oway in the first round, or he's kind of that top of the second round kind of guy. And I remember just being like, well, that's only like 5 or 6 picks later. Does it really matter? So I think that's, I think that's going to play into it. Penning looks like, and I would imagine based on how he's expected to test, and if he plays as well at the Senior Bowl as I think he can, I think he's a mid-first round type of talent. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think 45 probably is going to be too late. I tend to stay away from the valuation part of it, even though I think I've told you before, I actually think the evaluation, what you see on the field, I actually think that's the easier of the two skill sets. I think valuation of where you think guys are going to go in the draft throughout all the rounds and how you can maybe manipulate and move around the board to take advantage of that, I think that's much more difficult to do. And the reason that's one reason I tend to stay away from it, because it's hard. But the other reason I tend to stay away is because we have incomplete information. We don't have access to medicals. We watched one game on this guy. Now, like you said, you and I have gone back and watched some 2019 games, but we don't have anything from 2020 that we were able to watch. And so, you think about teams and scouts, they're watching way more games on these guys over multiple years. And so they've also got medical, they've also got character stuff. So we just have a really incomplete evaluation. So for me to say, oh, I think he should go here based on an incomplete evaluation, well, then my valuation is probably also incomplete because I'm missing a lot of the supporting information to really help me make an accurate projection on that. So I tend to think 45 will be too late, only because if he tests the way that his offensive line coach seems to think that he'll test, guys his size that test well, they're going to come off the board. That's the NFL, especially at that position, at a premier position like offensive tackle. They're going to come off the board if they test well and they've got solid film and they've got that kind of size.
And I think that's, the Senior Bowl is big for him. I don't want to understate that, because I think it's going to play a major role in where it's going to be. This is probably a bad example because, I mean, Wisconsin Whitewater is a little bit different, but it reminds me of Quinn Miniers. He kind of caught some eyes, but then when he got to the Senior Bowl, where he's playing with different competition, not necessarily the same type of situation, but any of these Division II FCS guys, once they get up in that level of competition and you see them dominate, which I don't know if he'll dominate, but I think he's going to have a good Senior Bowl. I think I made that clear. It's going to probably think like, okay, all those competition level concerns are now gone. I've seen him do it against his peers that were in those higher, even though I didn't see it on film for 14 games because he didn't play in that conference or whatever. So I think that's going to kind of play into there. And then, good question here. Does anyone here actually think DaCosta stays at 14? I don't. And I actually think we could see DaCosta jump up this year. Hopefully for E20. I know this is the Trevor Penning film room, but I'm making that one of my.
It's hard to say. Yeah, he likes to move, but it depends on the player. It depends on how the board shakes out. If there's somebody that falls and he doesn't have to go move to get him, or if there's somebody there that they really have a grade, and I think that's the thing you always got to think about with the Ravens. I mean, they had that sign hanging up in their war room. Was it past behavior is the best indicator of future behavior? So I think they really value the work that their scouts do and the grades that they come up with. So if there's a guy who they have, a pick 14 sort of grade on at that spot, I think they'll stick and pick. If they don't, and he thinks he can get more value through a trade back, obviously we know he'll do that. He's shown that time and time again. So I think it just depends on.
And to give you an example, I think we all expected a trade back from one of the 2 first-round picks last year. I did. I thought he'd hop back. I thought he'd hop back for Creed Humphrey, and then he made both. So, and we found out after how he felt about Bateman and Oweh. So, good example of what you're saying. Just recent draft. And so I'll just kind of wrap this up. So, just kind of some of my thoughts on Penning. Again, projects well as a pass protector. I think he's going to have some technical adjustments, just like everybody does coming out of college. But in terms of some of the things that are a little bit harder to teach, his functional strength looks really good. His functional athleticism looks good. His play speed looks good. I thought he moved quite well. So as a pass protector, I think he's going to be, he's going to project well at the NFL level. And that is an evaluation of him as a left tackle. And then when you look at him in the run game, I think he's got a lot of work to do in terms of his space blocking. Again, I don't think he's going to be asked to do a lot of that in Baltimore. So in terms of how I feel about him, big, powerful dude. We've seen what he can do as a finisher. I think he projects quite well in a lot of down block situations. If he comes to the Ravens, he's going to be running a lot of gap, duo, power, those types of concepts. Is he going to be asked to run some outside zone? Absolutely he is. I think, they absolutely run outside zone. He might be asked to pull. He might be asked to pull on the counter bash. He's going to be asked to do a lot of things. And that's one thing about the Ravens scheme that I don't think is O-line friendly. That run game is complex. They run a lot. It's not just, most teams are running a varied scheme, but they run a whole lot of concepts. I don't even want to see Mike's list. You guys heard us talk through just some of the different looks that you can get from the Ravens. So I think for a team that I'm not going to be asking him to consistently get out in space as a run blocker, I feel pretty good about him as a run blocker. So Mike, why don't you just kind of wrap up your thoughts on him, and then we'll wrap up.
I think you said it well. I'm kind of on the same track that you're on, particularly with him as a pass blocker. I think he shows, some good techniques, some pretty refined techniques, especially with his hands in pass protection. I think he moves well with his feet. I think the run blocking for me, and he's talked about this himself, how he needs to clean up a lot of his footwork technique. But then you think about Orlando Brown at left tackle in this offense, and they were using him on all of the counter bash stuff, and he's pulling. And obviously, he did that a ton at Oklahoma. They ran a ton of counter GT stuff at Oklahoma, and he pulled. And so you can have guys who maybe aren't going to necessarily be on the Ronnie Stanley when he's healthy spectrum of athleticism at tackle, but can still move and can still function on those pulling concepts. And I could see Penning being a guy who could still function on some of those concepts, whether they had him at right tackle or left tackle. So I think he's a first round player. Like the 14 versus what the slot, harder for me to say, but I think he's a first round type player, particularly if he tests well. If he doesn't, we've seen what that can do. To where guys kind of go in the draft, particularly if it's poor, that can there you go.
My guy Tyler's got that on lockdown.
There you go. All right, I'll just leave it at that. I think he's a first round player, particularly if he tests well. I'll leave it at that.
I don't think there's a better way to. And like I said, what would I do? Couple of thoughts on trading back. First, is he in the 20s? Is he in the teens? I think at some point, I think we gripe a little bit too much over that. I think get the guy that you think is going to be a good football player for your team. If you can trade back and get that same guy, perfect. If not, you may trade back and see him go a pick or two before you. So there's always a little bit of cat and mouse within that game. I guess I would say, because I think Penning projects better in a specific offense versus being a little bit more versatile, I could maybe see that being a good argument that he goes in the later 20s, mid to later 20s. So as a trade back candidate, may make a lot of sense. Or if you want to get real aggressive and use all that late round ammo, that maybe they trade up for him. Maybe he gets to 28, 29, 30. Some of those playoff teams want to get a couple extra picks and they trade back to 45. I just did it in a mock draft. I took Ojabo at 14 and traded back up with the Bills at 28, 25, one of those two, and gave up a third round for him. I'd be all for that. Again, 2 first-round picks, double dipping at offense and defense, just like last year. You get 2 impact players in the trenches with Ojabo and Penning. Not saying that's how it's going to play out, but just to give you an example of some of my thoughts in terms of the maneuvering that Mike mentioned that we've seen DaCosta do. Something that I'd be all for. So that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you so much for coming to the live stream. This was probably our best showing in terms of numbers, so really appreciate you guys stopping in. Big shout out to my guy UNI Panther 043. Not sure how much content I'll have for you moving forward, but I think you mentioned above that you're a Ravens fan, so hopefully you kick around, my guy. Anyway, so that's all we have for you guys. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other. Peace out, everyone.